Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day. My name's Vince and thanks for joining me for another episode of Secrets of the Trails. Today I'm in Cumberland, Maryland at mile 0 of the Great Allegheny Passage. The Great Allegheny Passage is one of the premier rail trails in the country and was the first to be inducted into the National Rails to Trails Conservancy's Hall of Fame. The Great Allegheny Passage starts here at Canal Place in Cumberland and runs approximately 150 miles through fantastic hills and valleys all the way up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In this series of episodes, we're going to explore the Great Allegheny Passage segment by segment. I've done a more extensive overview of the Gap Trail details on the website secretsofthetrails.com. Briefly here though, I'm following the general guidelines set forth by the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy itself on the gaptrail.org website by segmenting the entire trail based on the major trailheads. As you see here, there are technically 26 segment points of interest, though I'm going to be shrinking it by a few, primarily based on ease of access and amenities at each segment point. But before mounting up, let's spend a moment or two here at the Cumberland trailhead, which is Canal Place, the focal point and the convergence of two trails, the Great Allegheny Passage and the C&O Canal towpath, as well as the station for the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. There are a good variety of parking spots, with ample parking for handicapped access and electric vehicle charging stations adjacent to the trail. Also, you'll see that new e-bike charging stations have recently been installed here at Canal Place. There are also some bike lockers for rent here at Canal Place. There are a number of shops at Canal Place, including a bike shop and trail outfitter. If you use Cumberland as a base for an out and back, I'd recommend taking advantage of some of the restaurants, including the Krabby Pig, Cheris Winery and Distillery, and European Desserts and more. Let me tell you, they don't just have desserts, although their tiramisu is to die for. They also do handcrafted coffees and sandwiches. Canal Place has full-service restrooms, a small open-air concert venue, and has historical signage showing the significance of Cumberland and the old C&O Canal to American history. There's also a small community playground here at Canal Place. The centerpiece of the plaza here is a statue of a towpath boy showing the history of the C&O Canal in the area, and it's right in front of the Western Maryland Scenic Railway station. But before we mount up and check out this first segment of the Great Allegheny Passage, let's take a quick look at the history of this trailhead town, Cumberland. As always, more detailed history is available on the website secretsofthetrails.com, so check it out.
Cumberland, Maryland is nestled in a historic Cumberland Gap, a natural pass through the Appalachian Mountains, and borders the Potomac River. Its rich history is deeply intertwined with the development of the United States itself, particularly during the westward expansion and industrialization eras. Cumberland served as the eastern terminus of the National Road, the first major improved highway in the United States. Constructed between 1811 and 1837, the road connected Cumberland with the Ohio River and facilitated westward migration and trade. During the 19th century, Cumberland experienced significant industrial growth driven by its access to natural resources such as coal and iron ore, as well as its transportation infrastructure. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, one of the nation's first major railroads, reached Cumberland in 1842, further stimulating economic development in the region. Cumberland was also the western terminus of the C&O Canal that was constructed in the 19th century to facilitate transportation between the Chesapeake Bay and the Ohio River Valley. The completion of the C&O Canal turned Cumberland into a bustling canal town and increased the city's importance as a hub for commerce and transportation. The city also played a significant role during the American Civil War. Due to its location, Cumberland was strategically important for both Union and Confederate forces. The city was a key transportation hub for the Union Army and served as a hospital base during the conflict. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, Cumberland thrived as an industrial center, with glass and textile manufacturing contributing to its economy. However, like many industrial cities in the United States, Cumberland faced economic challenges in the latter half of the 20th century due to deindustrialization and changes in transportation infrastructure. Despite these challenges, Cumberland has worked to preserve its rich history and heritage, with efforts to revitalize its downtown area and to promote tourism based on its historical significance and natural beauty. The former Western Maryland Railroad station in Cumberland has now become a visitor center and a station for the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. It's also the focal building at Canal Place, where a granite marker notes the end of the C&O Canal and an in-ground plaque that marks the start of the Great Allegheny Passage. And it's these two trails, along with many other attractions, that bring thousands of visitors to Cumberland every year. Today, Cumberland remains an important regional center in western Maryland with a diverse economy and a strong sense of community pride in its storied past.
So now it's time to mount up and check out the Great Allegheny Passage segment from Cumberland to Frostburg. So we're starting here at mile 0. The Gap Trail starts along this brick walkway next to the train station and the visitor center, and then runs along Canal Street here to its intersection with Baltimore Street. Normally we would have to worry about two-way traffic on Baltimore Street here, but this segment has actually been under construction for some time, and I think it's actually completely closed off, but nonetheless I'm just going to walk the bike across. So right after we cross Baltimore Street, the trail crosses the Western Maryland Scenic Railway tracks with this little Z bend configuration, and you can see even for a weekday there's a passenger train at the station. Probably we're going to either pass it or more likely they're going to pass us on the way up to Frostburg. Now this is the first of a number of interpretive signs on the trail. Just past the railroad tracks, the surface is about 10 feet wide, paved surface for the first mile or so, and paralleling obviously the active rail line. Going under another set of tracks here, and just after that, about the half-mile mark, we come to a decision point. There's another small parking area on the side here that isn't actually designated or marked as such by the gaptrail.org website, but we have a decision to make here. So here at the half-mile mark, the trail tracking splits into two options. One option has the trail running alongside this unnamed parking area and across this access road by Jack Abel Incorporated and IA Construction under the Valley Street Bridge. That option is about 1/10 of a mile. The other option is to turn left up the trail here that makes a nice 180-degree turn alongside Lee Street that's up there beyond the trees, connecting to the first option north of Valley Street Road. That option is slightly longer at 2/10 a mile, so either way you have to cross traffic, so coin toss, let's go to the left. This option may be about 1/10 of a mile longer, but it's actually a lot shadier on sunny days. Now, technically, our big intersection here with Valley Street and the Valley Street Bridge over there, if you really wanted to, I guess you can actually take this road down here and connect onto the trail. That way, you're going under Valley Street Bridge and back to where we're going to be. But I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot of traffic along Valley Street here. It's just you have to be careful because as you saw that car going up there, you don't have a lot of sight line, and there's no stopping for the vehicles here. So if you do use this route, just be very careful crossing Valley Street. Again, regardless of either option you choose, we end up right here. The treadway for the Great Allegheny Passage Trail in this segment for the first 2 miles is paved. But after we pass the Western Maryland Railroad Bridge, the treadway surface becomes crushed limestone, obviously with the exception of some road and rail crossings. We've hit the first mile on the Great Allegheny Passage. The Great Allegheny Passage has mile markers just like that granite marker that you just saw on every mile across the trail all the way up. One of the first things you'll notice about this segment is that the trail crosses the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, I think 6 times. As we go up here, I'll correct myself if I'm wrong. And obviously those railroad crossing segments are paved once we get up higher up to the crushed limestone. And right about this point is where we're coming into the Narrows that we're going to talk about a little bit. So just short of 2 miles in, we're definitely in the Cumberland Narrows, and another interpretive sign talking about Lover's Leap. I'll put a better picture of it up here in just a second. Lover's Leap is actually, I think, right there. An American Indian princess and an English trapper fell in love, couldn't get married, and the old Romeo and Juliet thing came up and fell to their deaths in the Narrows. But it's just a legend. So I did a little bit more of a workup on the Cumberland Narrows here on the website, but suffice it to say here, a nice 900-foot deep gorge that's now traversed by Wills Creek that's right over there. This passage wasn't only important for the Native Americans in the region, but for later frontiersmen, military troops, and eventually for the development of stable transportation routes like railways and the National Road. Just passing the 2-mile marker, we're going to see the Western Maryland Railroad Bridge that carries both the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad and the Great American Passage across. Just real quick, as you saw a little bit ago before we talked about Lover's Leap, some rail bikes coming down, and those are rented by a place called Tracks and Yaks, and they have a place up in the Frostburg station. And another interpretive sign, and you know I love interpretive signage. The surface on the bridge is plank wood, so a little wobbly. Hopefully the video isn't too wobbly as well. But right after we cross the bridge, the treadway turns into crushed limestone at this point, and with short exceptions for the road and rail crossings, maintains crushed limestone all the way up to Frostburg. We're entering the first long curve here on the Great Allegheny Passage. And it's at this point where the trail actually starts its upslope and continues it all the way up to Frostburg. Short of 4 miles in, before we get to the end of the curve, we come up to the Cumberland Bone Cave. The story is that when the original rail line was constructed in 1912 for the Western Maryland Railway, a local naturalist discovered fossils among the rocks blasted from the site, and this prompted an official excavation of the site by paleontologists from the Smithsonian Institution that same year. And they uncovered multiple fossils, some of which are on permanent exhibit at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. But even though it's pretty cool to look at, don't expect to go spelunking in there because obviously it's blocked off to public access. So just past mile 4, an interesting little site that you'll see on the left here. I guess I'm gonna have to research this and figure out what S&S Maple Camp is, but it's there. I don't think I've ever tried any of their maple syrup, but we'll put some more information about this if we find it on the website. I will say the wonderful beauty about this segment of the Great Allegheny Passage is how you get these wonderful sweeping curves, another one that we'll see here shortly, but also these wonderfully long straightaways that can just put your mind at ease if you're so inclined and give you a nice relaxing feeling. A lot of shade, some sunshine interspersed along the way, as we'll see. So it is a fantastic ride. And we've hit mile 5. Shortly after that 5-mile mark, we're coming up to the Cache Valley Road trail access. Cache Valley Road can sometimes be pretty busy here in LaVale, Maryland, but not always. So this gravel lot features a porta potty, no water facilities. It's all gravel, unlined, about a space for about 10 to 12 vehicles parked in a single file. Just want to be careful though, if you're coming back down the trail, sometimes people will back out, especially larger trucks, larger vehicles, and they'll their back end of their vehicle will cut across the trail a little bit. So just be careful of that. I've actually seen that happen, and one cyclist had to kind of swerve really quickly in order to avoid getting hit. Just after the Cache Valley Road trail access, we encounter one of the famous landmarks on this segment of the trail, and arguably one of the most famous railroad landmarks east of the Mississippi.
This is Helmstedter's Curve. It's a 180-degree horseshoe curve of the rail line that's now used by the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. It features a wide vista, and it's a popular spot to stop and grab a photo or two. If you're lucky enough, you may also encounter one of the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad trains pass by.
Another one of those rail crossings. I think this is number 3. You could check me if I'm not counting properly. About 6.5 miles in on the trail, we find the Brush Tunnel. This is a 911-foot long railroad tunnel that was constructed in 1911 as part of the Western Maryland Railway's expansion into Connellsville. The tunnel carries both the Western Maryland Scenic Railway on the one side and the Great Allegheny Passage on the other. So if you see a train about to pass through, it's best to wait for about 10 minutes after the train passes, because the exhaust fumes can still be pretty suffocating. The treadway through the tunnel is that familiar brick entrance and pavement that the Maryland section likes to do. It is lighted, so that's a plus. And this is, I think, what, number 4? Again, nice, peaceful, beautiful scenery, but you get a beautiful vista. That's going to be my term for the day, I guess. Let me stop for just a second and show you all the way along the mountain range there. One thing about a lot of these trails, you ride them, that's great, but part of the charm of them is you just have to stop every once in a while and enjoy the scenery around you. And I will tell you, the Great Allegheny Passage has a lot of scenery. Here at about 9.5 miles on the trail, the gaptrail.org website designates that little spot at Woodcock Hollow Road as a parking area with space for about, what, 3 vehicles maybe? Paved but unlined, no other markings. But just beyond this parking area is a rest station with covered seating and a porta potty. As I'm stopping here at this covered pavilion to change my GoPro battery, here comes the train, guys. So I'm just gonna stop here and let it come by. As I mentioned up there, the smoke there, you don't want to be in the brush tunnel with that. Okay, so yeah, it's gonna add a couple of minutes to the video today, but I think that was worth it, guys. So I think it was actually a good thing that my GoPro camera battery had to be changed at that point. Really cool. And I believe this is number 5. What's cool about this one though is certain times of the season, I guess especially after it's rained, you can see like some water trickling down off of these rocks. Obviously today it's dry. Apparently it's been pretty dry in the Cumberland area for the last several days, so there's no runoff. But depending on when you visit the trail, you might be able to see like a little bit of a waterfall there. So this little segment also has a few bits of loose gravel and some changes in the depth of the surface. So just want to be careful around this segment. We are actually going to head up towards some really beautiful vistas here. I think that's going to be my favorite word, is vista. Just taking a look at all of that. So etiquette notwithstanding, there are portions that I'm going to kind of roll over to the left here because there are some gravel washouts here along the right side of the trail. And right here is one area where it dips down close to mile 11. There are a couple other spots up further up here that I think the maintainers of the trail would do well to even out once the season closes and they have time to treat the trail without having to worry about a lot of bikers and hikers on it. So some more benches along the side, some beautiful vistas. We'll stop here for a second, but we're going to stop up above here for something else. Just seeing way back all of the beautiful mountain scenery. Again, any time of year, this is just peaceful and this is just beautiful. And about 11.5 miles on the trail, we come up to another sweeping vista. That's going to be my favorite phrase for this series. And it's the town of Mount Savage. I'll put a better picture as always up on here. So the town of Mount Savage is here on the right. Again, at this time of year, with all the foliage closer to us, you don't get a fantastic view of it, but you can see pretty well. This is situated at the base of Big Savage Mountain. The town of Mount Savage wasn't actually named after the mountain though, but it was named after Thomas Savage, who was a land surveyor who traveled through the area in 1736. And remember that name, because in our next segment from Frostburg to Deal, his name's going to come up again. And another area here where the trail dips low here on the right. So again, call out to the Gap Conservancy, Mountain, Maryland. Would be really nice to have you guys repair these couple of sections where the trail dips really low on the treadway and can make for a potentially dangerous situation if you're not aware of it ahead of time. Intersection with Patty Baker Road. You'll notice that there really aren't a lot of trail barriers in the middle of this segment. They just actually have the gates on the side and the pole on one end. They do have some spacing in certain areas, like at the Cache Valley access. Actually, they have that little thing in the ground where they can put a trail barrier in the middle, but I don't think they usually have them in there. I think it makes it easy, especially since this section of the trail is so widely used by a lot of trail groups and cycling groups, that if they're riding in packs, it makes it easier for them to not have to worry about trying to shimmy and navigate in between the barriers. And again, if you're looking for something nice and peaceful, a good mix of shade and sun, and a little bit of a workout, depending on your physical condition and skill level, this is fantastic. And what have I said before? Better than yoga. Mile 12, 3 miles and a little bit more than 3 miles to go. And we're coming to the first of a couple of these steel frame girders that held the signals for the Western Maryland Railway. I don't honestly know if they're still in use. I've actually never been close to one whenever the train was going by, but obviously they were a carryover from the original purpose of the railway of freight trains between Cumberland and Connellsville. If anybody from Western Maryland Scenic Railway knows if they're still in use, leave me a message in the comments below. And recall some time ago I mentioned tracks and yaks up at Frostburg. These guys are taking their rail bikes back up. You can tell you're getting close to Frostburg itself. We're crossing under Parkersburg Road. So you get to see we're certainly coming into the suburbs. We're going to see more houses on the side. Another one of those steel girders. Obviously this one doesn't have a signal light attached to it anymore. Up to mile 14, and it's right about here that we kind of say goodbye to the railway, because you'll see it starts to bend south away from the trail. It will actually zigzag up and cross over the trail twice before we get to Frostburg itself. Crossing over a small bridge here. We come to crossover number 1. And just beyond there, you can see crossover number 2. So hit mile 15 and we're just about a half a mile away from the trailhead itself. And about mile 15 and a half, and here is the Frostburg trailhead. So we're here at mile 15.5 and the Frostburg trailhead and the end of our ride today. But right here at the Frostburg Trailside Trailhead, this isn't the only part of the trailhead if you want to think about it that way, and we'll delve more into that next time. But for now, let me tell you that the Cumberland to Frostburg segment of this Great Allegheny Passage is a fantastic and relatively easy uphill ride, offering a variety of beautiful mountain views. Since it parallels an active railway, there's an opportunity, like we saw earlier today, to encounter the passenger train on its way to or from Cumberland, or rail bike riders from Frostburg to Cumberland. And while there are some portions of this segment that have a slightly steeper upslope than others, this segment and the next segment from Frostburg to Deal comprise the most uphill elevation change that you'll encounter on the Great Allegheny Passage. Obviously, your physical condition should dictate how you approach this segment, but overall, if you pace yourself and listen to your body, don't let the uphills stop you from experiencing the Great Allegheny Passage from where it all begins. And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you next time for another episode of Secrets of the Trails. Have a great ride.